talingin. Oh, you.
Oi, malung tutaw Chinese. Malung tutaw bet selung tutal marugul adro reng sala tial radio shirgi al tutaw. Tiamo mongoma elol mel el shirgi del dongot mokni lo bengela Palaway radio. Chinese malt maru del al tutaw el metial show agote gu susra rubugul mar masil belaw. Armutling ra am trablur ba abol wadr belaw. توغو بيت المال شغل سوس التريغال الأوكياغ المسئل مي تلوريد الالتو تاو نغاني انغال كيرستين ماير كايسر نغا أورو سيلي وودز هول أوشانوغرافيك إنستيتوت أدي رغلو بنجد الالتو تاو نغاني مايكاني OSISMERENG أندريس نغا غارا سكورا University of Hawaii el time ngoro lo bengela tiagi del wutsol o bengela KIRSTIN mong sebel later yang mogora al mutil mteklisel wa sengra gora ron ringi lo bentiri ra adra wutsol adire lo bengela mal sakal introduce angale Lucia aurora sa astial center gi del ngasel outreach communication and outreach program ngai gi del Lucia ngale singe tirigaya orur tetial Beriuselchais. Ending gora al bebira tame tawar mal masanga mangal lesi or sel tama ku kulingit rasi al sebele gora from time to time gora alternate nga masinge gora kauti nga masinge ndirgal mal to kaureril el malas mal gora o aisa gagi del tora urera sentel maragal communities magal tora school visita al school agal elementary school saya gora tetele la matrigaita gestro mengel al tutau tial talk show el al tutau Cristina mal interesting le gadrogul mengel la sing mbotoga agimle tera last time o aisa sia geuro lo mengela Okinawa environmental science center masele university of Newcastle ngale James Kest el mrula gagi del tora gora coral spawning ma coral restoration endi malu ngilarngu delenga Christine ma MAIKANI o mengel al tutau tirga dire el mru rakmed lo sisil toy ending guktia kalorol lo spegel maran del trigal betogol gimda kalorol o spegel do aseng son del maranda egal bugir ral maranda tirga orol lo bengela egel do akida adar bela se lop egal moklol mai biobel badl to aseng porairis ang aklera sel sa tora science en porairis mong malt maru del mos edlo orol lo mental tutau e dirregel mal to gubet sa egel orol lo rula gora mal atituogle mal ungilar ngudro rens luror le temusuba egel dudula sein selo du chino motor belang awada sa egel gora arsel malu klak del lela abadengel ngal maranda selo uliang algel gora de alsa sel other dira chino motor belau le ndia gatinge del chino mendi se agora dai tail e eres el bodo bolo ngodo du egida mo malas mongil mal madingela sengrata amusu burniti al gestri Maluaise Chinese as usual ang mal marungu del guk marmadum e o ay sabe bira guk urol na al sentera motmok lo bangela gagi del maklol al adra blur at madire legal dainga kara blur at Maluaise e bay di beri tiagi de bay kuaulan gum sangai del el gor orut taluror el KIRSTIN mabol open el gora o aisa tetera galurerir and then edolmon program again. So KIRSTIN, thanks again for coming this morning and welcome to our Beriuselchais. I just briefly explain the kind of works that we've been doing at PICRC with other institutions, how interesting it is to kind of work with you to look at the different coral species, not just the branching as the others been doing so far, but the massive coral. In our language, when we talk about the massive coral, porairis, our Palawan word for that is lob, L-O-B. That's a big porairis, big massive coral. We call it lob. By the way, for the branching, we say sond. And sond means a twiggy branch or little twigs branching. Yeah, sond. Anyway, so at this time, KIRSTIN, I would like to give a floor to you, give the floor over to you, so you can start talking about the project you're doing.
Sure.
And from time to time, I might have to stop you so I can kind of translate into Palawan for the sake of our older listeners. Okay, so go ahead.
That sounds great. Well, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm happy to talk today. My group has been doing a lot of work on Porites. As you mentioned, lobe, actually the common name in English is also lobe coral, L-O-B-E. A lot of people, I think, actually think massive corals are rocks. In fact, I have heard a few people, when we are out on the research boat, refer to the rocks at our study sites, but they are not rocks. They are living animals. They are alive. They are corals.
Nice. KIRSTIN راسي تمرات سيل جروب برتيرا أورولو ممكن جايد المقلول المران اللي دول سين لو interesting لان كلير كده أدر بلا LOB لوب إني قال جيد المقلول كلير ساينس LOBE لوب ندير كل واحد يوان كلير بلا ممال interesting anyway KIRSTIN أسين بتقول تامل سيل بالتوب المرة غير لو روت لو بنتري تريقال لو مقال لايف بنتريقال وقتي أدر بلا كتب الأويل على بان كلير جيد لو سين وارال بدين الأمران دي كده أدر بلا سي بعض أدر بلا بلا سي مقلول بعض Hindi nga ida KIRSTIN lo ay sa say kadukura dio mes la sing kura maklol bat di tia mal interesting len di regel ngamranya live organism el kelo mai tial bat om koronil moklo mal kura interesting tial.
So my team has 3 major goals for the research that we're doing in Palau right now. First, we want to understand what determines the thermal tolerance of the Porites corals. We know based on previous research from Ann Cohen and her group at Woods Hole that Porites inside the semi-enclosed lagoons in the Rock Islands bleach less often than corals outside of the lagoons. And so our first goal is to figure out why.
KIRSTIN ang malakol wasay ngariak del toil talom subira soril mo omes malubeng ko rawal gole silbol merek talom subeng ko rawal bolo ngir del toy ako trinya wasay tel guru pertira mata talo rolo mengila gagi del Porites rock ngariya tara agora haka sette del Woods Hole Institute del me uror belara lawang ngama ada center baby rakam la memong il dire ko ilmesa gigi elat jalure la KIRSTIN mangagi dele MAIKANI agora wal follow up agora wal longingil seguid lure ngel megot el hagasel mei etirga ngariak del tokol sori lomes akot tokol sori lomes ni asi ngaraw ul maigel agagi del lob malumong moklo marandel ngara alsela tose semi enclosed ngora wal alsela se tial ngar mit pay ngaria tele la dabul morin dingora dia alsal mal open el waigal erwa barrier reef mal open sel got sori lo mesni asi ngara maigel OCC lob nga alsela semi enclosed warwang mit bay ma OCC lob nga alsela ngara krela almol aigel nga krela almol la mal betnya madrak leal ya gal ngara alsela ngar mit bay awal mringin madrak leal sia got sori lo mesni ya ongerunga.
Our second research goal is to study the reproduction of Porites. We want to understand if the corals from inside the lagoons spawn and their larvae disperse out of the lagoons. Can they settle and can they survive on the outer reefs?
Oy mela selong erul soril selbon mek talure toro mesni asi malubin sel dirt kola asi amin sel second kola asi ay gal ngel amrandra ay gid lob ng alsela semi enclosed malibong ko rawada sa ngarmid tial ngarmid bay ay gan sabel selom illegal ngisel Beriuselchais del mora let's say au el blue tial ikla ngarmid bay sabel lome survive sabel lome mugrol mo moklo sia ongerul del tol sori lo mesni ela sel mo ngedel tol lo mesni ya.
And the third research goal is actually what MAIKANI has been leading, is looking not only at Porites, but the whole community to understand the recruitment of corals across our sites. Are there different juveniles that recruit in the lagoons versus outside?
elang kagi del mulko la sei eselong edel sori lo mesringi segi del elang akora walo mesin dulu del la MAIKANI ngal ngal gedel ngaras kura hawa oro lo ngel kagi del hakasira utsul nguk tio mes selo sei kamo mes aigal di tokol kakro semran la sei diregal ngel gelen sibel mel al sela semi enclosed ya lo Beriuselchais mura ol bulul maray kretial ngermit pay en sibel mel survive elang ka korawal akora di duli tiang ngal mutel mal mom ketekilo sei kare la MAIKANI wa mo mes sela sei maigal kakro semran wa mol tirak lagi ngel maikrele o mes sei ngarania sibel survive mo mugrol magaradia seguidia seguida walu la MAIKANI ese es el momong del gol melang bulgula sei tialom subela KIRSTIN MAIKANI selbol mereka tialom sub hopefully mos ilmo mo dengel wasei ay gigil kel del gol nglo ngaray gel wal ke kamal ung result ni seguidia tetela ureri trigal terul el allo ngawro lo bungen.
So you said you're trying to figure out why the corals in the Rock Island Lagoon bleach less than the ones outside. How do you do this?
You have to take tissue samples and do a genetic analysis. So my team has collected samples in Palau. We preserve them in ethanol. We ship them back to the United States. And there we are able to extract the DNA from the coral itself, from the algae that live inside the coral, and also from the bacteria, and look at the DNA to tell how they are adapting to the heat.
Okay. Mal interesting ang kala Lucy ogelo say makara kamakara mo mtingel say gay gidil. Oh wait, halanga kamla apnemi sa cell point. What was your question again? Sorry, I got distracted a little bit, so
okay.
I kind of missed that.
So I asked Kirsten, because her team's looking at why corals within the lagoon bleach less than corals outside the lagoon, and trying to figure out why that happens.
Oy melang kagi dile Lucy ogel wasay ngaraw ulma siraw ulela aldo du e kado wasay ay gel marandel ngagi del lob el kel al selangar mitbay awal mringriya amadra kleald regel marandel ngara ay krela aniko be gel ngara amadala raw el blue siam legri lang ngagi dile Lucy melama ang kagi dile KIRSTIN amo ongeringil. Can you repeat the answer again? Sorry, I got distracted.
We collect samples and we look at the DNA.
Basically, ngwal kalek ta sample ray gagi del marand arwa KIRSTIN MAIKANI e gore o mesa gel DNA. DNA rel ang selbotol gorwa DNA mringir kita malmo mdang la DNA mung se la sei ngwal kalek ta sample mong mengeti taigel engania lola gagi del DNA lola al selengal marand o mesa gagi del DNA se la sing ngigel klak del lela ora a ogurule ngal marand gel klakdal ngal marand uspenil mugurol maral muklo.
So we look at the coral itself, we look at the symbionts, the algae that live inside the coral, and we also look at the bacteria. There are 4 genetic groups of Porites, and we look at differences between the genetic groups to tell which parts of the DNA influence how they handle the heat.
I see. Melato ngariak kloal ay gagi del lop, ngariak kloal badingel alop. Melato extract ay del DNA, el me omes lo say. Ngaral el DNA ngaral sel ay gagi del kloal kakrus mand. Sel klak del la badingel ruli mangal maranda wal mringil madra klal. Wow, that's very interesting. So sorry, I had a hard time trying to explain what's DNA because we don't have a DNA in our language. So I just used the term basically the ingredients. In our language we say ingredients inside the coral.
Yeah.
That's how we kind of describe DNA. Again, ingredients malumi ger resela abatingel ngal marandel. I guess when it comes to DNA, we Palawan people, we have a limited term, so we always refer to DNA as a ras, a blood, the blood inside the body, Ger klang dalela, why say, wasang nga unmong milel why say ida, ngil ngalgel ngay mga resel ngay, DNA ngay influence ra. That's kind of how we. Anyway, so that's a very good question, and nice to explain, so the listeners will know a bit more detail on how these guys conduct their work. So with this DNA, can you, while you're here, can you extract, and from here you can know what's the difference, or do we don't have adequate equipment or to find that out while you're here?
There is actually quite a lot of equipment at PICRC. I think I could do the DNA extraction here, but I'm choosing to do it at home because then it's my equipment, then it's easier for me that way. Doing the analysis, looking at the DNA between the genetic groups, requires a supercomputer. You need a very, very fast computer that can do a lot of the processing. And so no person owns a supercomputer. It is from an institution. So you need a computer with a very, very fast internet connection so you can use the supercomputer that is somewhere else.
Oh, okay. But for the DNA extraction, you can extract DNA while you're here, but then bring it home for more. Okay.
Yep.
Oy, malgo Christine wasi oy elalgi matiyang agi malas mal extract malubit tangub tay gidil DNA gidil kakrusel klawal kakrusel for different species kakrusel lob. Matidi ngub tay gidil DNA ngi egut mok le ogore mora bluril leng selsugum temora mutro ko makalum lom subel gidil DNA gidil maranda. Yang magiri los pera korawal البغرور الانترنت كده مثلا ستيال الانترنت راه بالوضع ده على البغرور ما ده قاوض سن سوبر كمبيوتر قال كمبيوتر كده نقول قرا دي غير الكمبيوتر غير لوبيس ما غير الكمبيوتر غير لوبيس قال الكمبيوتر وامريكا لا غير يا اوبيس نبال دي اوبيس كمبيوتر مرا نقول انفورميشن المبروسيسور تو سيار سيلدر سي سوبر كمبيوتر مال مريد كده تونيا غران تو دا انسرين واسن مغران أيجي ذات الجيب المغرى تتوغل على لغة مقرب لهم لا تمال إكستراكت أيجي الدي إن إير أيجي الفور أيجي الغروس المراند اللوسوب قلت مقل موسويل مغبغاقلين كمان ما يغني مرينغ لا دو نيدر هذا لا مراند غاسكوجيل تمال دي نقطة الدي إن إيه قلت مقل أيجي المجرى البليل يقول مال مامريجا لسلبرا سيجي so you want to do this DNA in your Woods Hole Institute?
It's actually going to be, the analysis will be done by the postdoc on our project, who's not here talking with us today, Dr. KIRSTIN Grupstra. He's based at Boston University in Massachusetts.
Oh, okay. Melat na mayagid el DNA, es el borrey, en área guktara ad el murura wa el guk ngar omsub el gira yagid el gora omsub el yagid el ako makal omsub el yagid el tora DNA, el base sa Boston University, melas el ngalmong yang ngani awil cloud ngirtir mutama yagid el DNA yagid el marandra blue belal mamsang yagid el ad en yagid el ad ako kara aurera Boston University musu murula yagid man sa el mom ngala say ay galwa maklon institutions marang de ka set gukmal ko ra ditil lorol ditil tadire ko ra awal da set network ko connect rum gela bebira university guk mudura nganaklel متى ملا مقاضي أضو مقاضي مثل سوم تمرو على نسيل جوك ما يجيد السامبل مال مسترين متوك لتوك مدور سيجيد من والقت مقلة من مال interesting. I was just saying it's interesting how these big institutions are kind of collaborating and working together to improve science, I guess, and that's how science improve. Somebody comes up with an idea and publish a paper. And then somebody else will come up and say, yeah, but you can still do it this way as well. And that's how science improved, Hindi ka dula sing adam na subi tiam mla momrek omsuba da kasel stop. Ada subi ang rang kita gukmela say, at tilakanel sa edel magrani, guk to oli selom subel ngay del megot lat, ong edel adamel do oli omsubel ang urulat, mongol say mon mong au mutial science sa dimral mo advance. Malung la rungudel PICRC loro lo bentrega idel kagrus la de mutmok lagi del tora marand le godro gul madngela say tial coral bleaching adimral moklora blulat awul melal time mutol institution sam la mawdig gira tora blulat marand coral bleaching mutial siwar temperature dimral marbab awul ma amranda di medera blulat mombutol liga institution warwa KIRSTIN Woods Hole marwa Newcastle ma Okinawa arugul ada dimla mawdig gira lo say kadamo yer es el lora la clave de la blue adam ralmong magida obangel musuba gal klal de tral los siglos así ngaral maranda igel se el urul timing Ebol makal da blulat den sel malmol mil di ngaral marande man dial bola kamran ra blulat. Siya ko rawal da italum no igagidlom su lorunya. It's very interesting. MAIKANI at this time ngora sadlo kera kasi melasel guk rerem in terms of this what sort of things are you doing in exactly you're doing to try and contribute to this oy ngul mo bulo kan. Insam di blokol torbelaw.
Oh, okay,
Oy.
silang.
Oy.
El ang akawal rela kartel project ang akawak assist tel research. So igalos pe tiraka nga wako lang sa retir makwak helper tirel lam elamran the silpol lora giru or gigalekta sample yako lang sa retir di el aselwal men el project nga nga kalidringi ang akawa ko mes choral composition regal 6 el site ramam or 7 el site ramam actually. So over the past telal years el gibla meye kalekta adayra gigalekta siya singra marandra igal kakaraw el site meye nga ngara computer lo mes identify mo igang ngara mangaral maranda direkal in the meantime magi sere latal regal pe kal site ramam gagi del tal awal seleb el maranding eng mongal sere leringi hopefully sere lera gagi del tal mama me mesek mo igang ngarang klel maranda so el angwal 3 part tal project nga kay wako mes igal adult igal mama maklo ma juvenile which is kagarera 5 cm maklungel may gagidel migarel recruits el ngare gagidel tal yago mese o mesek mo ngaringi yakla kagaraw sa igal marandra al sela igal semi enclosed lagoon ma igal marandra ikerla almol.
Okay, halik lutul kora adi mga do el simak mo luide kwaso kan pal mo taklit talurem lang MAIKANI asi katulot tegi dulom subela KIRSTIN hindi sel guk mal rolo lang asi ngaria seminal site blam establish. Melay gel seminal site blam establish ang ngaria tiles ang ngaria gel seminal site. El mokta ngaria gel tiles sa selem elay gel man ngaria gel seminal site yung mosum elay gel recruit wal settle gel tile malubeng mo brek gel tile o me madal mabulay gel tile. Mela selurere mawar obora it site o mes asi for example ay gal klimel badengel amrandel mel tiang ay gel mengelgel sedra seng melamongarak med 1.5 inches sa maklungel ngarit tiagi del basyo malsum ngarit tial basyo ya osisil tam ay gel tal ngat tial basyo ni gagi del klimel maranda ni sela ngara brek gagi del wa umkor o mes sela sei may gal marandel melra itzel basyo ang lagel ng mlamogro tiagi del basyo mangaria direk ni sel lome direk dub tial basyo ngora ngar sei gide ay wai sei melam bulgulak mo mensebedo lagi tagi del result traurerem emo mendeng la sei mela sel bomre kaigal ku del site em analyze agel de tarau e kadmo mendeng la sei nguk tingra mangaral marandam el tagi del basyo yang algel el survive e al suma algel guk norgel basyo en el guk bo survive ra guk tara basyo ngora ngar sei gida mal interesting sei gida ul kadmo mendeng el wa sei maigal marandra ni kollop sellom elaniko ay kalgal ke rogul dikera alsaniko mo okmed nga 5 inches ay gel baby na ang isel milel alsaniko direk el serel mugrol maigal trato ko ay gal lobon nga alsaniko ay gal rogul lobon nga bitari ngelgel tirga gidil dingat yang al ubeng
I see
serada ada durata eli ekamlo dula term kora koltak ng si mal interesting tarato ko yung tialurere makora amot mau tesel dula say environmental filtering. Yeah, I was just mentioning this because now I understand a bit more detail about how the sea conductor work, and that's what sort of brings me back to the term environmental filtering, meaning we're using the environment to see how varieties of corals are grow or move on to the next community experience environmental
el awal nga black analyze egal dairal black collect already egal dairal black collect kasi ngaringi yakla karo sa egal adult el maranda al sela semi enclosed lagoon ma ikela al mall wala nga ngi aklakakaraw sa ngi. Ding da kalsal klaw aklakakaraw sa ra, igal juvenile, igal recruit. Wala ka explanation or tell findings sa nga.
I see.
Saying environmental filtering. Environmental filtering, saying tell environment, ngal maranda nga ringi, nga ringi, ka right conditions ringi, support rangkal maranda mang dub al moklo.
Okay.
Mangkal maranda wal di dub al mora like certain size, let's say like 5 centimeters. Emma, the legal conditions sa wal dakal enough dakal ungil support rangkal maranda.
Oy, segit sel tur mulgul gel ngira kagid lang kang malmas modi. Kale klutro katralo matak kringi moren sa kalsya correct. Bulga sa sel dos pertil alto la sa environmental filtering wa umome sa kamla analyze gal data. Mangwabla mo model kasi okay. Ang aral maranda sa el kertial site 1 el mol moklo. Yang aral maranda sa el kertial site 1 talo si sil site el limon mo reach ra certain size emat. Oy ya un mongway segit segit la say environmental filtering awal do la say because sa cellular mo si certain size ital environment tel area la keri adigyal sebel muguruli lang wala kal sebel ela segit ada ka do la say len clear daw ula lung low pH aw niya mo so isba yidil ka corrosion. Okay. I hope our listeners are going to understand the tell. Wow, it's my first time, as they say, every day is learning, learning opportunity. I didn't know environmental filtering, and now I'm beginning to have an understanding of why some corals can survive here, some can only grow up to a certain size, but then die out. And I guess that's when we have to also look at like, would it be because of the pH, it can survive with that pH level until a certain size and die,
Yeah.
That's when a lot of factors comes in, yeah?
Yeah, the younger corals are more sensitive than the adult corals. If you are a large mounding coral, you have been alive for 500 years, you are a lot less sensitive. But if you are a small coral, a fish could eat the small coral and then the whole thing is gone. Or the temperature could rise and the coral dies.
Right,
So the sensitive stages are the younger ones.
I see. Oy, nga ida KIRSTIN, el dire mal modo olisit nga may gani la sa ko do spela environmental filtering, sig del term do spela may gani. Awasi amaklon maranda maklon lop. Wablabon sisi aklangari. Singel kora otura telgibil mo makayal del daw, malumin telgibil kora mo bralma ararel. Alumin telgibil kora moklo asid ringi. Rayel bigay mangalgala maranda. Amal gala maranda mal ngwata sing sensitive ngora mal dirgo uidil ngora dirga IT to kala orulel mal sebel di triple chensa ora temperature ng salinity ang mat mela tirga tagid lurerir agora malas mitral gen kiu gagid la sei mela loy sei ngal klon maranda ngara sel brotra al sel tiara sa ela badengel maluben di eringi el se edlox o mesngi e mo badengel la sei ay gal maranda sebel lotura awangral el condition adab lengin ngari sider sela badingel ngal clown ngar alsil ngora kanek timortel ko nya may gani lo sei mal sugu ngal clomil el dim lak segi del chins ngal clon sisi lo tula klal da marwahid ngora dimral melme tigi clo e madlen wala mlak le madal segi del DNA radalal mor ngal ngal me la segi da ureria wa a KIRSTIN lo me segi del klal ka rosel por iris lo sei kami da kay kalchin sa igaras ela badingel legal marand malumi gelu ula oruler ang legel ma oruler badingel mo muklo el mal mora ka pare do mesa sei ngaran se bedel tigra al sel legal klawal ka krus el marand el sel nia wal gora amlisi legal marand ma abol mring la sil mo makal mabol baral ma daw malumi mo kla tel gel mila daw en sebel survive legal marand gora da targa segit talom subi I was just saying, so that's how you try to figure out. That's what you're trying to figure out. Basically, extract the DNA, bring home, and try to sequence the genome, or try to work with the genome to find out how these four different species of Beriuselchais.
We're not sure if they're species. So massive parietes are very difficult to identify. They all look kind of the same.
Okay.
And so previous researchers have called them parietes lobata, they have called them parietes lutea, they have called them parietes massive. And we are trying to figure out actually if those 4 different groups are different species. And that's why we're doing the reproduction. Because we are mixing the eggs from one genetic group with the sperm from another genetic group and seeing if they will fertilize.
Meaning if they fertilize
they're more likely the same species.
Okay,
It's a little messy for corals, but if they do not fertilize, then they are probably different species.
Oh, okay. Oh, yan direkal ko mo subes direkal dimlaksal madang litial to lol ko ring kang elak ko kon am din. Ay gal mo krol massive marand. Gagi den kal hakasel direkal mo ko say. Ngora direkal san pal mo blak tak understanding ring. Arbe bira adak masay parairis massive, marbebilak ng parairis ngarang clean, parairis ngarang clean. Mela tamalaigal DNA ni, amal mo ngetral, ekora malas mo lamel, soril mo muna say, ay gang ngosisil species, alubeng kora kakrus species. Let's say ngosisil species, ang klote ele lasay, selam elen sebel, ay gal ngisel ma soswela sa el mokoya sa mongal. Dil sigum hindi akal sa el mokoya sa mongal, emulga sang possible kakrus species ay gal. Okay. Wow, very interesting.
Yeah, so it's hard to tell species apart with only looking at DNA because it's not sure if the DNA is different enough to be different species. That's why you have to look at the reproduction. If it does not cross-fertilize, then it is probably different species. That's why we're looking at all of that.
O yung maloko, KIRSTIN wasing, hindi kalsal sa edal maldi tuira DNA dito lasing kakrus species. Ngire del kora direkal mo tira rolela yal ngalgir kora wal me el ko mes rasay sibel el mongar yal ngalgel maximum dial sa el mongar embru rasay ngakro species. So what you're saying is you try to spawn these different species and see if they can oy mela gayil gulgol wasing kid sel domes a KIRSTIN amol ko sa sel domes ay gal mo klolo ko kasi ay ga kwa si siul maranda si siya tetelen. Hindi lang kagi din mo ko lasing gora di ka kalsan pal mo blata kasi kang malo bata aluyong pora ang igale ngarak lang massive ay lutea melat sigit tamlas mo melay gagit lel sum sel mo ka sangal geleng mongar siya tara alobal ko ramol bod lasing kang si species niya sum sel mo ka sangal gele mongar mo marand ang KIRSTIN as en daital o si species. At tara lang si del DNA hindi ngay mo ko la say DNA di kalsal sa edel mal lultuy dingi do la sen kakro sa species. Aun mo mo special role dire ko ra amal mo kan form la sen kakro sa species.
So we have 4 genetic groups in Palau. One of them is primarily in the north, in Kayangil in that area. So we are not working with it this time. The other 3 are in our sites, which are all in Koror. One of the lineages is very widespread. It is everywhere. It survives best when the water is cool. There's a second lineage that is very flexible. It can handle cool water, it can handle warm water. And the third lineage only exists in Risong and in MEYER, and it wants to be in hot water because the water is very hot there. Wow. So far, based on our preliminary results, it looks like the widespread one and the flexible one can cross-fertilize, but it might actually be the case that the third one, that is only in Risong and MEYER, might be a different species. It has lower cross-fertilization than the other 2. This is preliminary, but we will know more once we do the full analysis after the trip.
I see. KIRSTIN amol ko la say nganya gagidel kloal el batingala gagidel la seng lop lomes el alomro limlay emlo dasi lomes ra ataringil kloang lenda kalarang ngaringil anor del umsin ngarang ayangal yak ayagil gukkel day ang ngaringil gal site tira omes al time mal interesting le ngagida ka KIRSTIN mo ka sagidel kelday imorngi aku mal di soal maglo ako ra magkel kol tildaw ya imorngi aswal SBL el kira magkel kol ma magayal es el mo ngong luar ay gidil marando lomes aguk mal soal di kira ma di magkakal del daw esegil gura wal titugol mal soal kira di magkakal del daw siya adoptigin tiar el selar risong ra gal al babra yorong rebet blur orior kadam tigin risong bay tigin ra marar gigil tigin ra marar marisong bay ay gigil soal di kira gura di magkakal del daw maun mangagida KIRSTIN lo así agi ko ramala sumam ele lo así ng sabi ela igal el marand el kera ingel to se flexible ingel do así ng sabi el kera magkakayal de sabi el kera ko magkakalkulto to ko romes así ingel sabi ngegid el flexible el marand el kera magkakayal magkakalkulto ng sabi el lamba ele ngaigal ngisel mo dagan sa elmo o marand malchum sa elmo brand. So if the flexible ones would successfully spawn in what were you trying to look at?
We were trying to figure out if it can cross-fertilize with the widespread one and with the Risong and MEYER one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oy, but Thomas era lo así. Malsugo mga gidil sebel kera ora magagal makira magalgolto. Kalel sebel ora malas mul crossbreed maliba ko ora uspelom elelo ngel kera agukti magal magukera agukti ora magalgolto. Radia kala segid lo así. Ngora wal sebel mokira magal de mekira magalgolto. Magalel sa edros penil gora ubangela igel gukti ngara amaral dia wait sebed kalel sebed lo spe ringil gora a crossbreed mabol sebed gut mukling gay del marandel dikera wa risong bay mamarare gora wabol misi engalkel okay
Yeah. So what's really fascinating about this is if you look at other places in the Pacific, Kiribati, American Samoa, Hong Kong, there are also different lineages of parietes in those places. And there is one that is widespread, one that is flexible, and one that is in hot environments. So maybe our team will be able to separate those into different species, or maybe we will decide they are all the same species, but it's fascinating to me that you see the same pattern all across the Pacific.
Oh wow. Ang gagida KIRSTIN mo ko la say hindi ay gagida lobo ngel adire gal blal bitig la say nganya ngararwa Hong Kong ma
Kiribati, Samoa.
Agiribas arwa Samoa tial Pacific el dire gal kmedro gal gida lobo dolab nganya angel guk mal diswal kira oram gal babu ngel do sing flexible sa el gora kira gal da guk kulwa mom golol tendire gal disbel keni mangel guk mal dikira guk mal diswal dikira gal golta temodel dire gal mam tiglo sa ngani gal bebira blu mela to gora mala sam la say agagal se edel gora orol lo bangela gagil bebira blu sumare adam ro gagil ro e bodo ngira say gang ngaro species salu ben se el dosishu.
Yep. Our research will show whether they are multiple species or one species.
Why say
Yeah.
o malol ko niya say matagid ko subir ela lagar belaw asabel legal gekkarni legal result talom subir aselo gora wabol subidra ngar bada tam la say may gang pal ka ros species salubeng lengway say didilira ulelo say gora dira sal moblo tak ma bebira adak ma say tiang klel tial loba ngarang klel bebira hakase ko kasi tiang klel mesegi dire la gora wal dire gal partra gel gekkarom subit tigal mom ngel asay mangaji de lobol gora dia gora wal raung dinia se mangang mal ngal species asebel loga ke karega idrom subit am ang sebel ma identify la se on dia ngang mal ngal species ngamal ngal badingel saya gora lol goria KIRSTIN.
Has there been any genetic work done in, say, American Samoa and Kiribati to see if those three are separate species there? And will you compare them to the ones in Palau to see if they're, for example, the widespread one in Kiribati is the same species as the one in Palau?
There has been genetic work in those locations. To my knowledge, there has not been a reproductive study. So the reproductive study to me is more important for showing can they cross-fertilize. But there has definitely been genetic research, and absolutely we are planning to compare our results from Palau to those other places.
Ngal lusi ogelo say nganya ora uron na motmok na let's say giribas marwa sa moal ko omes at tagi del DNA malumit tagi der sela ngal marandra igay ya KIRSTIN aku kongeri lo say oy ngari am lam gatmok lo luriol diome sa segit hindi tokor sele o lela dirgak mangkagi din mulko la say magi ko malas mlom el la say al sumong mugatmok kulmong agi korom el en somamal lukura mo kampera gel korawabol lola ba gel result tawro agi bas mara samoa label me korom kusira gal ku result tawro bela lo say ay gang maral ka cross species sige dal kora malas mlo ring maral ba say gal kora kora science ndal say del digi del kora digi del dimsu be di do setya magram kora kada musu edi kala kora omesa say ngaria kora adel mrura ay tagit le at some point in time ngungila kora kamper kora kukola blom kusilo say may gang waige al ubeng kora ka cross maral ngila gal to science gila kora share information edi dul musu as we go along. Very interesting, yeah.
Yeah. One very important thing that our research has shown so far is that the Rock Islands are a very important place because in the lagoons, the water temperature is very high and the pH is low. And those conditions are similar to what is predicted for the open ocean in 100 years. So the corals in the Rock Island lagoons are already adapted to what the ocean will become like. So it is important to protect them now so that the corals can spread everywhere as the ocean continues to change.
Gracias, KIRSTIN amal ko la setial egal dulu alba abra bulu belaw especially tial lengar midbay ngaseng mal close to trail basyo leng ngoge gagi dulu mo tolom subum la motmok la en wabla bolo dengan la sei egal dulu alba abra tiar orang armit piar orang arbet amal magal da bel temperature nya telgi bilang arba tial di temperature outside la ayat tagi dengan midbay madire gal sel gelmil maluben pH dia katora ba balwadra se pH mo gadi musel gelmil adao letial sel pH amal low enya mulko la sei ya gagi del marand del KIRSTIN ya KIRSTIN mulko sei gagi del marand del kirangar midbay la survival magatal time el tagi del magayal ma magekami menya survival kiral sel indire gal mulko la sei haka sirablul ada qorawabla bol lom dasur kmo al sel adart el rakh ramadan التأييد الغلميل ما قلل دليل عن الكوبي تيا مقول ميل قلل دليل تيا لكلا تيا دبلا بلو ما أوري ربلو بلا المليك قلل على المول المرا الشل على المول هذا سيقول أنا ممتيك لا شيء الشل هذا تراجع التأييد الغلميل ما قلل دليل عن الكوبي ما يسيجد ما نقول ما قلو تطلع عن الكوبي السوم ما يسيجد الشل هذا تراجع إن بقول شيء أيقال مران دراني كوبي المقطع كيرا واي يسيجد الكونديشن ay gaya mos el walom el yang algela alo Beriuselchais mora ay kreani kobay en sebel ay kret tial ngermit bay en sel el survive le tial klel deler al sadar tragal mlamo mgmi megal adi way tial klel deler la lang klera al gegre loral meklo se agora dai tail mangagida KIRSTIN waseng maklo tu tial ni kobay leng seguida klel deler sel conditioneria wada sei kodome sin waseng mo conditionera malsum nga siya trato ko MAIKANI isel mburgula say malsum elat time aniko be ang ari gel marandel el meel e by the time reach outside and the kitchen sa condition min dal sel mo moklo madel because ngod ay gang aburwa sal suma future outside amral mo condition aniko be mburgula say agal gel sel lugora ma Beriuselchais gal to the declare ulen dir ngal sel ablaya sel ablil ti adios isil condition oh, yung better niya survival mo clone. Wow, very interesting things you're doing.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, MAIKANI, I was going to ask, since you've been looking at the photos of the community composition more, do you want to make a few comments about the differences between the inner and the outer sites?
Yeah, sure. like plak pati karingi yak mong alsela gagid al inner site eng mal teligibel batagal batinga lamran dangara alsela gagid al semi enclosed lagoon teligibel makayal de makamima like you said compare del mora batinga lamran dry curl ay gal ang ngarekel al mola el ang wal ngangi yak lagakaro sara aygal adult aygal mama maklo ngangi yak lagakaro sara batinga lamran dra al sel michael al mola ding da al sel klo ak lagakaro sara igal migare marandi igal juvenile ma igal recruits. Oy.
Okay. Ngal may ganil amalas yasing. Mabala mas yasing lami ada oy. Igal mergolom rolelo may silme malas yasing. Mlamo dokta igal rogul yasing egor omes. Emol momtiglo asing. Klo rosra abadengel amrandel de betigra al sel right krill.
Oy, baise.
Kadilo asay igal adalta abatok ra al sel. الكامبيل موراي كريل يا جيل مجري هذه رجل بتقرا على السيل كامبيل موراي كريل
ده على السيل بتوق باي ده كلا غراو سرنجي وال نو سيسيول مقمد لو سيسيول بدنا العمران دل دوب على السيل هذه رجل دوب على كريل
واي سي او مقمد لو سيسيول بدنا العمران ده اندي كديلو سما كلو بتقرا على السيل رايت كريل melang bulgula sa kategora o mesela say mambulgula sa medalo sa gidil tol mulgula sa environmental filtering bulgula sa gal magagrel marandal mlekira al sel o kasam butto ka maklo ra al sel right grill hindi gal magagrel maricrut sa gil dilgulumeu ma magagre ra al sel micrel agora medel dios isiu makor oren sa gal magadulo sa gidil say mambulgula say agora mo tatsa seguir todo mo logonia sa environmental filtering bulgula say ay gagidin magagre el dosi wakmed el dosi al sel micrel alangan ya certain point in their life span en stoba ul mo say umbeto ka maklora al sel right krill wal gora dia volvit sa adulthood
vai say
okay agora mo understand mo logonia oh wow very interesting malungi la igal luriol igal botol gagro siluro rutilang ngol tal gisatiale ngol tal kora mal mungiro sitial urere la gagil le KIRSTIN MAIKANI tiraga may mga selgi mga uror e kado ta o mi vai igal dulu la kado moral ba mes kado se siwek marang ding mal ya kada ngora kada ada di dul masawri ngora ada kada san mal mum dia si tigata mal murula kado kora di dia si temle urul gile lamrand hindi una kasang mal ka interesting mal ko tal ko mal mo dong ok le ko mal mo understand tial lureril klo wagel mudura le lo sen klo tutela tial lureril leng ntogo ngomes ra ko togo bet sil beding lamran ndi kal wagel bebi om subul ko mal de om sa gal begir ral engal KIRSTIN ami lo la sei au ul marada sori lo lo bengel gal begir ral maranda gal sond mal beta do lo bengel gorawal betadom elle betadom grole betado mungora de mal adul mutat sai gal lobling gorawal o with la urel mal interesting tel urel adra wutsol el guk ngwatara gora mal guk ngwatara gora madala urora tora marand ngun me emskide ara o mesa garo su pebira marand tira guk me lo ba guk tara bedeng la marand mungtara to ngwada ngungil to ya bodo Orol lo mungkin legal kakro silbrand da sal malmo ngil madnge tretelela aklangaring mabol se edul qora malmol mulmul lagay idul lo say matara club se bol magal da bela blul ade bol mugmim engral maranda igel se edul wado spel el qora amrul tial malu ko doy sa igel marandra sel alway se condicionada bol mugmim el maror it's very interesting did you wanna any more question?
One final question.
Yes, sure.
So a lot of researchers study Acropora, and you mentioned that parietes is actually quite a challenging coral to work with. Why is it so important that we also study parietes?
Well, Acropora is just one genus, and there are so many genera of corals, there are so many species of corals. You cannot have a reef that is only Acropora. So if we want to protect and conserve and restore coral reefs, we need to understand all of the species. I also personally find parietes fascinating because within that one genus, there are mounding species, there are branching species, there are plating species, and so the structural complexity that you need for a coral reef to support fish and biodiversity that is very important, is drawn from that structural complexity. So within Porites, you could have all of that structure, and I want to understand this incredibly resilient coral that could help maintain the structure of our coral reefs in the future.
I see. Mahal interesting sila ko niya, Kirstin. Nga sa ngagi del Porites, sa ulmong diragal mal interesting adoro lo mungel. Ngagi del doseng lob. Ngal loba ngagi del maranda di doseng lob. Betul kalau usul bedingin. Ngari agel la mounding, ngigal mcroll bath. Mangani agel dula seng encrusting. Ngora tara bedingin la Porites, lugu kora dio mai la bebula ba de diabol, kora tebul ma diabol. Ngukti mai ra ba de dimra lomer. Mangani agel dula seng branching. Direk ngagi de Porites ndingu kora ngariar alil, ngora so tetele la sondo. Mongmolgo la sing interesting mal sori lo mangel ngai del Porites le tombra lo sei ai gal son da tratta mel ngemde malu ba doro lo mangel asonde bola asonde endigi asondo etial lo mangel gal Porites un mal interesting to sei ngal cell structure malu ben cell blebele ngal ngai del Porites awalo da ayer rogul garo su bedengel amranda ngodo kera ngari aku pengen lamaran del diomail ya Porites sa edem tigra diomail ngari pengen lamaran del guk tibgir ral Porites sa edem tigriya bugir ral Porites ngari aku ramal mo moklol mound mbay bebi lamaran da sa edem tiga mound ni ang tara to mal interesting Porites le tomra sa segi del structure ni kadima kadakor omdas la sei al suma mananda ko mal diulmay rogu eselba agarger marwa agi klala kora awana longi galeng kora di ngora di o mai la gal marande dia ka kora alwesa bigir ran
Tadakal butigal gil sa elmotwa baringi.
oy ndia kasi ilmtiga kora bolulo orngi mabol maun ma Kirstin amul kasi mal interesting Porites segi the reef structure sel kagro sel blebelel tel bertakla Porites ola ba ger rogu maria bigir ran ma o mai ma maklol bad ma mengora sei malungi la do lo bengeleng sebel maintain segi lo sei al taloral mugondia kay del Porites el gora kagro Porites munguk mal di mo madaigal son di mo gora dio mail ya gele bola kangi ya unu interesting Porites wala ba del kagro sil bedengel mabola kagral manan mala ngangi la dir ka happy leng gora wadi gel feel at home le selora leng mesa wabir ral mai gelo mail malo martinya do golen mal interesting Porites yeah that's very good. You know, it's really. I'm really glad to kind of learn that, and because that's a very good point you raised there.
Yeah.
You know, we not only try to restore, we have to also think about the reef structure.
Yes.
It would be nice to not only have a branching, because once the branching is gone, what do we have?
Yeah, the ecosystem services provided by coral reefs are largely related to the structure. They
Right,
are nursery
right.
areas for fish.
Yep.
They are homes for sea cucumbers. If you want fish, you have to have corals. And so maintaining that complex structure
I see.
of the reef is very, very important.
I see. Ang Kirstin amal ko la say, unmong direkal maklo tutel dong mokra radbet. Tial coral reef, sel di coral reef, lo ko tarak rap tutel da say, amrand, legi la say coral reef. Engi ase da say sel di coral reef nga da say tial garger. Tial structure garger amal klok tutel leng botol bedengel aklangar au tira gel ka rose structure garger. For example, botol klangar au tira dulu la ar. Botol klangar au tira ruah coral sel lagun. Mung tial overall structure of reef amral gire del maintain ni el matamaleng nsabi el wabol affect au pebirak langar siya ko ra dai talo ko niya Kirstin yeah.
But that said, Porites is a little more difficult to study than something like a Acropora. Acropora is hermaphrodite, so every colony is male and female at the same time. For Porites, they are gonocores, which means there are male colonies and there are female colonies. So hermaphrodites, if you're studying reproduction, you just need one colony to spawn because then you have both eggs and sperm. But if you are working on Porites, then you need at least 2 colonies. And for our reproductive study, we need many colonies to spawn so we can do the cross-fertilization.
Malgo Kirstin say Aigal sonda ulmung arada kora wa solil loro lumangel. Seguida el mention sin kora wal bote lengil muspera toa KIRSTIN se hermaphrodite. Hermaphrodite atto lo speringira atto kora science la sing ngel armal umen del lomn dingilo bas al mardil dingil sa alerdil. Ngora sebe lo mosini la sing war wagim. Mela unum beta loro mga corporan sebel KIRSTIN amal wasen sel diwan ko loni dingil kora wal reproduce embral bopto ya ulmung malo widra gal tora walop gal paradis ay asala kukmal disal mardila kukmal dirdil mela selom el wal giril luwas al mardil malme melas mlom el mung wal top da swel mangisel fertilize umbrand ela gagidel sond aku kwal din imol sond e dingilo to dia swel mangisel en fertilizer mung moral lo goro with la aurere la tora igal e lop igal paradis.
Do we have a few minutes? We can
Yes.
talk about. Okay, MAIKANI, do you want to talk about what it's been like doing the coral spawning and collecting the gametes and putting that all together?
Funny question. It's very hard work. Talaga wal maring alam. Takora seldom elam rand. Le ay gagid el species el gimorier lamangel paradis labara. Ay gam el 4 days after oragiru. Hindi ka mabalda game sure mong like malm eller oingrang. Sel bal era oragiru or sige del starter oragiru yagimora center ang ara center between 7 ma 12 ra club say yagi chega igal marandel mong lam ellen there. El rapical seals until like 8 days after the full moon. Esel bel yagi me itchel kalani ang aringi wala ko Tupperware lang ara alsel مثل بقلا سأل مال بقلا رديل يجمع غلق تيجال نسيل غلق تسوسويل غوكم براوان رغان تينر ميكس مروين أمسك مويجان fertilize موسيرل الأوبن دياغا الأول بالبلال الغنيا كريستين earlier was saying سيجد البال lineage 1 ما lineage 2 أصب إير cross fertilize ندين lineage 3 أدغال سال سب fertilize لبن 3 and that's why I guess I expect more like lineage 3 أول like قارو نقض species so yeah سيجد البال غرا تلقيب الأتيتوا غير تلور إلام ندغال سال كلو research الملاموريني الوسيجان مالك مقرالهم إلر أوينغران يمقران so مال كل تام أجيم spend الشغل كمون إلر أوينغران أوي إيوال غارو سنغريني like إلر like day 4 after a full moon الببيلين إلر like day 3 مونوال ديجرام لغارسيرا بقل تام الشغل إسل once السل بإلين أيوال غران غريني expiration date ريني like ngaringi at ndakal sel madaal almam gatagaling mamakngit oy mongwal sel temela amran dalam lagi ngarsel matutaw allome seling gram cross fertilize masak mo yang surviving dia yeah masel temela amran dalam lagi ngara center matutaw lomes yeah
Okay. Aku nasam lang takal ti almolgori mi dakal lutur ko malmo na osing. Akpay di asay selm dulu asing expiration date. Akora omisor say al sugumong let's say one coral only spawn eggs and for some reason the larvae game instead a much later would that larvae will be like spoiled or something or
oy why say الأول egal ngisel amran da awal sel beling like sabel so benda ki mo spe edim de al sel container ing sabel like pol next day ang lam da al sabel lom el lam da yom ko dong ngil viable like lam da al viable lam da al sel fertilizer ngil lo bengel atara
so next day so you guys haven't really figured out how long can we hold the larvae for how many hours can we hold the larvae until it's I mean sorry not larvae the eggs
2.5 hours
2.5 hours. Okay. So, what about the soswell, the sperm?
the sperm should we go into cryopreservation
Do it.
So egal sperma like kilam tiraro lelang sa edel freeze. El agi like sel illegal maranda gi collecta sperm ding giral egal sperm mal migare mong betring ya wal dilutra al sel tial daba. Mong mal gira mal malay sel suko mong mal ki am kadang gi condensed like mal tira oy.
Gora maldirga Gora maldirga tmak.
Allud la oy batal allud la.
Gora sa idro masingila sempelelew.
Maging maye like freeze liquid nitrogen. We found a way like give freeze sa liquid nitrogen. Like sa baluri lang sa amal mal may mrong mang summer ang dira ka gal sperm magimutulos pe.
Okay, yeah. The reason why I was curious about that is we're trying to spawn clams. And the clams will the eggs can last an hour.
Wow, that's really short.
Sorry. I got it the other way around. The eggs will last 20 minutes. And the sperm can last an hour.
Okay.
So that means once we have the egg, we have to make sure we have a
You have
nice
to move
sperm.
quickly, yeah.
We have to move quickly, otherwise things will expire.
Yeah.
Wow, very interesting. So, ela kung may gagid al marandon malme omes, gagid may kana sa mal mring luror. So in other words, you guys are still kind of trying to figure out the spawning timing and the
So we came to Palau for the spawning in April, and the April spawning is already finished. We have collected all of our data, but we do not know which genetic group each of the parents belongs to yet. That requires a DNA analysis, which will be after I get home. We are also staying here for the May spawn, and we will collect more data, and I think with all of that together, we will be able to answer our questions.
Okay. Ela oy. Nga kita Kristin mo kasi oy ela sa gibera April ang mula sa mama la gagid le lobulul mel mula sa mama kalekta gagid diral soril lospe mong soril ngatial mo mabudula mel mutul kalekta le tora tombra la sig abol botoka ko sample langal mo ang amos bil wala ongera bebira gagid keldel el gerel soril longera wala ta program ni mil koy el goal sitire. So that's a very interesting hindi nga kita may ganar sing mring lurol lang mo KIRSTIN baby lang ngora wala ka salwa say ngadro ko namu da say okay madaigal lob am elra aurora full moon why say hindi selwa say mal telal de siya full moon marang ako rawal mga dogo aul mo komenta abot kel mo tuta di amsal say da say kilo ka mal mo da say ngrang ay gel baby rak klabsen di abugul marsi.
Elang wal ayada qalba qalbo ilalom el ayga wal ngaringar bepirar adal mlameselom between April May October November. Yes,
We came in November, but nobody spawned
okay
then.
oy el asigidra last year gemera April eng dimil April dimla qalba May seral May tirqala November eng guk dimla qalba el angin bil April mongkola dagim shirk mo igang mom May and there dingaring here other mlamesel like May November ding wal takal kalbo ilalom
Guys, okay. Oy gora atito lang wa da gora dir go ndi ada sal shir sel mal troko la lel moral wala atito. Anyway, despite all the hard work you guys are doing, we really appreciate your effort on trying to figure this out. This coral this particular species of coral. As you all know, the work you're doing, the work the center is doing, the work other institutions around the world is doing regarding coral reproduction, coral, is all point toward, a future, warmer water, acidic water. So thanks for all your effort. Let's hope to try and continue to work together and see if we can figure things out for our future. For the sake of our future coral reef.
I agree. I do want to say I have a lot of respect for the Palauan people in how proactive they have been about protecting the environment. Every time we come for research, I have to apply for permits, and I know there are protected areas and there's lots of regulation. Honestly, I think that is fantastic because protecting the corals, especially in the Rock Islands, will help preserve the reefs long into the future.
Kasi KIRSTIN di maloko lasing malungi larun sel bel loror belaw ay gagil ko apto kol udul mal ko na amalas mo ko na mangario mal malumi ko na umakareo ay gagil maranda ma albabela mabalwat yung ko rawal ulungi arun selbelo ror bela lo dinas sangana ay gagil ko umbra na say ay gagil ko na blagar dina adal bela ko na mangario mal umakareo ra karger ul men ko na mosop oklia karger kidra karger tial karger ang mata dal time mal misala Christina yel. Do you have any other? I realize it's about time to finish. Yeah. So do you have other things you wanted to mention before we close the program?
Nothing else. Just thank you so much for inviting us on the show, and it's been fantastic to talk about our research.
Kom dira kalmal masaw ne hostra ka ma'am. Dira kalmal masaw la center hostra ka ma'am magimru legal project ka ma'am. And yeah. Thank you.
Atau say the marmara program regid magsubeseng telgibul ko na panlo wila discussion mag telgibul ko ay litra tri ilbung magsubese digu rega sulir ko adam netun in oren social program regid mal diswal el merega sul adro belau rogul adra blur belara support tilmera yalura center agi mo mol ay sermi agel selbon yab es lurol guk makatmok again bomodila sa gimal di mol ngogu agel ulung uli ma rangmil lolong ser kamam la center agi malo ba blakareng mrula galure ramal transop aklia karger madbel belau men sebedro spedil mora madad time madan di meritiang ya sior kita masimro komal saul
talingim oh you tarawra wal balula limbalti